Welcome to Whiskey Ace. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Episode 2, which is going to be basic distillation. And the reason that I want to do basic distillation, or how to make a single malt whiskey, second, is because everybody loves to nose and taste single malt whiskies. That's what it's all about, really. And I don't want anybody to be at a disadvantage. And if you don't know how it's made, then it's far more difficult to pick up the aromas and the taste. So it's going to be a very quick, hopefully, distillation followed by a nose and taste. And if you remember from last week, the what makes a single malt is 100% barley, yeast, and lovely, lovely spring water where possible. So barley, and this is probably the most important. Right at the very beginning. Usually nowadays it's Optic, which is grows in abundance in Scotland. And there's still distilleries like the Macallan that use Golden Promise, but Optic, it gives a good yield and it's a very good barley. So we have barley. Why? Because we want to basically convert the starch into sugar, and sugar makes alcohol. Okay, so this. Got to remember there's two areas, and unfortunately in today's world of single malts where they're working 24/7, yeah, it's all good, very popular, there's not a lot of malting floors left. There's actually 7. You can look them up. I'll be covering each distillery later in this series where I go into special DNAs on distilleries. So for now, if you want to know which 7 have working malting floors, just have a look on Google. And that part of the process for most distilleries now is gone. And I know it doesn't sound sexy, but that's the way it is. They get their barley from Simpsons, Berwick on the England-Scotland border, and it's done to specifications. So if they say they want 22 phenols per million in the malt, that's what they'll get. But so you know how whiskey's made, let's go to the old-fashioned way of having a malting floor. So you take your barley, and I actually have some here somewhere. You take your barley and you're basically going to put it onto a malting floor laid out, and then in the old days, don't know if you can see that or not. I don't think you can. There we go. There we are. There's barley. And you put it onto the malting floor, spread it around, and you're going to turn it on a regular basis. When you did this 100%, you'd have 7 men who were, looked like they'd been working out in a gym on the hour. I've no idea how they did it. Today, the 7 use probably a malting floor maybe 40-50% of the time. And it's an art, and it's very, very difficult. You turn the malt over for about 3 days. It's nice and wet. You're turning it over, and you're looking to get to about 40% moisture. Once you've done that, you're then going to mill it, and see if I can do this again. A bit easier this time. There you go. Mill it to there, right? And it goes to the mash tun. This is the first part. We're still pretty much like beer in a way. Goes to a mash tun, and it's boiled 3 times to different temperatures. Again, we're still trying to get the starch to convert to sugar. It then will go to, with most distilleries, Oregon pine washbacks. They'll be laid out. Sometimes, there's 4, sometimes there's 7. Depends on the distillery. And that's where the magic starts, because they add the yeast. And if you're lucky to be at a distillery just when that's happening, I think it's like a sci-fi movie. I mean, you look in there and there's all these humongous bubbles, and it's great to watch. So we're then getting closer to an alcohol, probably would be around 7 to 10%. And it would taste a little bit like beer, but sweeter. Okay, so from there, it's then going to go to the first still, the wash still. This is where the real magic starts to happen, because now what we're going to do is basically alcohol will boil faster than water. So what we want to do is we want to get the alcohol vapors to go up the still, to the swan neck, the lin arm, down into the condenser, where the condenser is very, very cold, and the condenser is then going to create what I would call like alcohol droplets, which will then go and be collected into the first spirit safe. At this point now, we're at about 20% alcohol. Okay, from there we're going to go to the second spirit still, and what we're going to do there is the still man, and believe me, I'm going to cover this much later. I'm trying to be fairly fast here just so that I can get to the nose and taste. The still man, who I think is the most underrated person in the whiskey industry. People just don't seem to talk about still men very often. It's a magical art. Is what they're going to do is they're going to bring that alcohol through. So it's gone through the second spirit still, and it could be running at probably anything like 74% alcohol by now. And what they're going to do is they're going to let the 4 shots come through first, which have a lot of esters and fatty acids. And what they're looking for is the middle cut, which they can do in various ways. But first of all, it's got to look clear. It doesn't want to be all gungy and green, and so they're looking for it to be clear. They also can check by the alcohol percent, and every stillman has a different one, but let's say, I don't know, 69.4. They look there, it's nice and clean. That's what's called a middle cut, and they take the middle cut, and that's eventually what you and I are going to drink. There's also then feints, which you don't want, and but both the 4 shots and the feints are recycled back for the next distillation, so nothing's lost. And finally, it's going to go into a lovely cask of bourbon or sherry or whatever, and age in a warehouse for 10, 15, 20 years. Okay, so that was just a little bit on the distillation, just so that now when we do a nose and taste, we are looking for 3 elements. Now, there's lots more. Funny one, actually, I was at St. John Whiskey Society, and someone gave me a single malt whiskey and said that one of the members nosed it and said, "This is the circus." And I had to think for a second. I was going, "The circus?" And I nosed it, and eventually I got toffee apple. And then later on I got candy floss. But he nailed the circus immediately, and that's a special skill, and it's also a lot of practice. Today I really just want us to focus on what you just heard. So what you think you might get, and there's 3, is what cask was it aged in? 2 would be the fruity esters that came through, and some are captured. There's an awful lot in the 4 shots, but they take some, obviously. Fruity acid esters, and lastly would be a cereal of some kind because of the barley, the influence of the barley. Okay, so what I've got is a Glenlivet 12. Glenlivet 12 right there, one of the most popular single malt whiskies in the world. I'm not like most of the other whiskey experts on YouTube. I don't like to take one whiskey, especially now at the moment. And so the feature here is not Glenlivet 12. It's because Glenlivet 12 will give you these 3 elements so easily, and it's one that I suggest everybody plays around with when they're trying to develop their nose. And taste. Taste is everything. So we have a Glenlivet 12, and let's just pour a little bit, and we won't do any water just for a second. Okay. If you nose this around, I don't know, 4-6 inches away from your nose to start with, like this, and You're supposed to try to get, believe it or not, you're supposed to be trying to get, first of all, vanilla, because Glenlivet 12 spent its life for 12 years in a bourbon cask. And I mean, you even find vanilla when with a bourbon sherry mix, you'll still find vanilla. But in a bourbon cask, for absolutely sure, you should get vanilla. I actually get number 2 straight away as well. But focusing on it, and if you're like me now, if you're getting the second one, if you're getting the fruity, then focus on the vanilla. Try it with one nostril, the other nostril, but focus in, because it's very important. The vanilla is the most dominant, actually. And what you can do as well to help, I have a nosing kit, and to be honest, I'm not sure. I think they're too powerful. But you can always go into the kitchen and get a vanilla extract, and you can sort of teach yourself how to nose. Yeah, beautiful. I like to smell vanilla. So you should be able to get the vanilla. If you're not getting the vanilla, well, we'll come back to it, and it may take just a tiny bit of water. The second, and the thing I love about Glenlivet 12 so much, is pear. My gosh, the fruit is pear. And you'll find, you know, when you're looking at nose and tastes, you'll find from the experts and the writers that there's always a fruit. And that is the esters, and it's part of the special DNA of a distillery. So it can be lime, lemon, dark fruits. It can be, you know, but much like a wine, there's always a fruit there. And this one is definitely pear. Same thing, you can, you know, go buy some pears, chop them up, get used to smelling pear, okay? Now, I don't want to put the water in just for a second, because we want to taste it as well. All these should be the same on the palate. Sometimes they're not, but in this case, you should get vanilla. You should definitely get pear. And the last one is you know, as writers, it's under the category cereal, but cereal is really hard to sort of go any further with and really think about malty or something. I think the old days, you know, I often can nose and taste whiskies by thinking of what Grandma did. And, you know, the old cereals like All Bran, you get the All Bran, put the milk on. No one would ever think of nosing a All Bran cereal, but if you did, it's that kind of thing. Digestive biscuits, crumble them up, and you'll get it from that, right? But the third one should be cereal. So now we'll taste. It's all there. It's fantastic. I really wouldn't need any water. One of the tricks I did is I actually eat a pear with Glenlivet 12, and the pear comes out so much more. Let's just get a big old little bit of spring water. Not much. Now, the reason we're doing this, which I've had on other videos, and I think David Broom just covered it as well, actually, in Malt Advocate, Whiskey Advocate as it's called now, is you should always have a tiny bit of spring water. And it's just like decanting a wine. It's the same thing. You're trying to open it. It can be it can be very tight. So you need to open it just to get those aromas. A lot of people say you're diluting it. Well, you're diluting it if you add a lot of water. I'm just talking about a little tiny bit. You can use a pipette, anything you like, but just get a drop in there. Opens up, and a lot of whiskey ambassadors, especially if they're from Scotland, with that, you know, the passionate Scottish accent. It's wonderful when they explain the first spring shower, where you're outside and all of a sudden the flowers open up. It's exactly the same. This is what you're getting, right? So you should get, I get even more vanilla and pear, and a little bit less on the cereal. So there you are. So now you know what to look for, and you know how whiskey is made, at least on the, you know, the basic methods, and we'll go into that through the series. Next week I'm going to continue the nose and taste, but there's one element that I left out on purpose. With the malting floors, or also if Simpsons are sending the malted barley ready, is peat. And I'm going to cover peat in detail next week. And I have 2 whiskies, and again, I'm not going to do 2 whiskies, one versus the other, and give an amazing rating to one and not the other, because all single malts are great. But I am going to do Bowmore 12 and Highland Park 12, and there's a huge amount of difference just in the peat alone. So, hope that helped. Till next time, see you soon. Bye.